The risks are simply too great. The words of the judge refusing bail this evening to Ghislaine Maxwell, the one-time girlfriend and alleged accomplice of the sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Ms Maxwell pleaded not guilty at the hearing by video link on charges she helped recruit and groom minors as young as 14. She'll spend the next year in jail, facing trial on July the 12th of 2021. Her lawyers had offered bail of up to £4 million and argued that coronavirus could endanger her life behind bars. Tonight, the judge said that no combination could reasonably assure her presence in court if bail were granted. Our US correspondent David Grossman joins us from Washington. David, was this expected?
Well, the legal presumption, Emily, in a case like this involving the sexual predation on a minor, alleged sexual predation on a minor, is that bail will be denied. And added to that, the government contended that there was an exceptional flight risk in this case. They gave new details about Ghislaine Maxwell. They said that when she purchased the property in New Hampshire, where she was eventually arrested, she did it through a company and used the fake name of Jen Marshall to the real estate agents. Now, her legal team, Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team, said that was all about trying to evade press detection, public detection. But the government said, the prosecutors in the case said, that when the FBI went to the property, they saw Ghislaine Maxwell through the side windows of the door, but she, instead of letting them in, fled to another room. And when they got in, having broken down the front door, they found that Ghislaine Maxwell had wrapped her cell phone in tinfoil in what they described as a mistaken attempt to evade detection by the government, not by the press or the public.
Fascinating. We heard a lot of legal argument today during the bail hearing, but there was one very poignant moment when we heard from an alleged victim who also spoke.
Yes, a lady named Annie Farmer, who gave her thoughts on whether Ghislaine Maxwell should be given bail or not. This is what she told the court via video link again. She said, "I met Ghislaine Maxwell when I was 16 years old. She was a sexual predator who groomed and abused me and countless other children and young women." She went on, "We may never know how many people were victimized by Ghislaine Maxwell, but those of us who survived implore this court to detain her until she is forced to stand trial and answer for her crimes." In the end, the judge agreed with that. She said that although, of course, Ghislaine Maxwell had the absolute presumption of innocence at this case before she stands trial, she said the combination, this is Judge Alison J. Nathan in summing up, she said, the combination of the seriousness of the crimes, the potential length of the sentence, the strength of the government's case at this stage, the defendant's foreign connections and the defendant's substantial financial resources all create both the motive and the opportunity to flee. What happens now? Well, things will move quite slowly. The government has until November to present all the evidence that they have to Ghislaine Maxwell's legal team in the process called disclosure. And then the trial date, as you said, is set for July the 12th of next year. In the interim, we now know that Ghislaine Maxwell will be detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, in conditions that her legal team say amount to solitary confinement, and in a cell where she is unable to talk to her legal team because of COVID-19, she's unable to meet them in person, that is, and in which, because she is viewed as a suicide risk, the lights are kept on 24 hours a day.
David, thanks very much indeed. Well, joining us now from Chicago is the former federal prosecutor, Renato Mariotti. Did this decision surprise you, Renato?
Well, a little bit. Often in cases like this where you have someone who's well-financed, who's able to put up a lot of money in bail, you do have situations where there can be circumstances that are worked out for a bond. But here I have to give the prosecutors credit. They put a lot of work into building up their evidence. But ultimately, in the end, Ms. Maxwell really hurt herself here through her own actions, as your correspondent mentioned, the wrapping of the cell phone in the tinfoil, the use of alias names and so forth really seemed to sway the judge.
A lot of people will be remembering the circumstances around Epstein's imprisonment. He died in prison or jail, as you say. Isn't there a real risk to Ghislaine Maxwell's safety in prison, a risk for her victims and those seeking justice?
Yeah, there is a risk. I will say when I prosecuted individuals who engaged in the exploitation of children, they were usually concerned about their safety, even if they weren't famous, because sometimes they wouldn't fare so well in prison. And so I think for her, that has to be a concern. And I also will say, as somebody who now, after many years as a federal prosecutor, now represents people accused of crimes, all of my current clients are very worried about potentially being incarcerated during the pandemic. So I think her safety, one way or the other, is going to be a paramount concern to her and her team. And I think as a result, there's going to be more pressure on her to cooperate or reach a deal with prosecutors.
I'm going to ask you to talk us through a system which is obviously a bit alien to the UK audience, the plea bargain system, how common that is in the US and what you would expect. I mean, could she, for example, offer one big name from her little black book and do a deal on that?
No, that's not how it works. So in the United States, first of all, plea bargains are very common, but a cooperation deal like you're talking about, what is required by prosecutors is that the individual tell them everything they know about all criminal activity, including criminal activity they were involved in, as well as other criminal activity they're aware of. So they really have to be an open book, so to speak. And then she can't pick or choose who she would cooperate against. She would have to agree to cooperate against anyone that the government asks her to cooperate against. And then in exchange for that, she would receive some amount of consideration from the government. But I think it would be very difficult for me to imagine a plea agreement with the government in which she did not plead guilty to a felony and be subject to a significant prison sentence.
We know she's pleaded not guilty today. She's charged in relation to 3 incidents. How strong do you think the actual case is against her?
It's not as strong as what you would think watching press reports or documentaries, because what we've seen publicly is a whole slew of victims, many different victims accusing Ms. Maxwell. And the indictment only refers to 3 specific victims during a limited period of time. So it's much narrower than what we have all watched and seen on television and have read in newspapers and magazines. And so as a result of that, I think the jury is going to get a limited picture. And a lot is riding on the testimony of one particular victim who says that she was actually abused herself by Maxwell, in addition to being abused by Epstein. So I think the government's case is beatable for Maxwell, but I think now it's going to be hard for her because for potentially years she's going to have to be incarcerated, and that is, in many ways she's already going to be serving some punishment even before the trial happens.
Renato Mariotti, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.